So this might be too big of a topic, but today there was a bit of a big discussion on the TLO group about that got kicked off by MTHFR. But what came up in it was hydroxyproline and its conversion to oxalate and concerns about too much protein and blah, 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 and being carnivore. And this might be a whole subject for another whole talk, though.
Well, it might be, but let me say in short,
Okay.
hydroxyproline, glycine, collagen, they all come down these metabolic pathways and hit a fork in the road. If you've got enough B6, you're not going to produce oxalate necessarily. Again, I think it's one of these things where it's a little more nuanced than automatically if you're taking too much collagen or too much of these other things, you're going to end up with more oxalate in your body. So I do eat a predominantly carnivore diet. A carnivore diet is very good in terms of B6 intake. I always take my B2 to make sure that B6 is going to be used. And I show no signs of something going awry. So I think the challenge is we need research, which actually isolates a dietary type, vegan, vegetarian, omnivore, healthy omnivore versus, the SAD diet versus a carnivore, and then evaluate what's happening with these kinds of supplements. Now, that said, on principle, the research on, I think it was hydroxyproline or could have been collagen, but what it said was that below a certain threshold, you weren't making as much oxalate. So most of the time when you're talking about something like collagen or gelatin, which are fairly equivalent, you would get somebody who is taking maybe a tablespoon of it. I just never take that much.
I'm talking more about just food, eating a lot of protein.
I think when you're talking just food, I don't think we've got that issue. But I do sometimes throw a little collagen powder or a little gelatin, like often in a drink because it makes a nice foam. It sort of gives me my version of a latte.
The problem with gelatin, though, is that for those people who are glutamate sensitive, gelatin's a big component, has a lot of glutamate in it.
Different, but that's a different thing. That's not
Yes.
the oxalate conversion. So there are unique hiccups that people are going to deal with. I do not see anything coming out of the research that's being done in the carnivore community that says a whole food's the issue. So that's the other thing we have to consider when we look at some of the research that looks at hydroxyproline or looks at these other compounds. They are doing that research with a concentrated, purified dose. I think your body handles that very differently than a more nuanced digestion, where you're going to release some collagen, you're going to release some hydroxyproline, but you're also releasing other things at the same time. And you're not getting this big burst dose. I even have the same problem with supplements. Like sometimes people will be able to handle, let's say, something like 60 milligrams of B6 or something, but they won't be able to handle it all at once. They'll want to go to one capsule. And when they take one capsule, all of a sudden all hell breaks loose. It's because you get this big concentrated dose all at once. So they may have been absolutely stable on like 3 10-milligram doses in a day and not be able to go to like a 50-milligram capsule as an example. Like dosing sometimes matters, timing sometimes matters. And I would argue our digestive tracts are built to handle, I'm going to get all these different kinds of nutrients together, right? It's not built to handle, I'm only going to get this one thing in this big dose, right? And then you take the capsule, it hits the small intestine, the capsule bursts, and then you've got this huge, what I would call a big bang dose of this nutrient.